You rolling?
I have been.
Okay. Here we go.
Hey, it's Joe West from the West Barn with
Mike Shimshack.
and our guest today is DQ.
Hey.
Welcome
Thank you,
to the West Barn.
Thanks for having me.
Before we get started, we want to encourage everybody, wherever you're listening, to subscribe and hit notifications, leave comments, do anything you can to help get us engaged and get us into your phone or computer every time we release something. So DQ is a good buddy of Mike's and a good buddy of Frank Bell's, another friend of ours.
Yep.
So we've all been kind of knowing one another. It's good to have you on the program.
Oh, it's great to be here.
Moved to Nashville 3 years ago.
Yes.
Tons of big cuts with Beyonce, with Pussycat Dolls, with, give me some more.
J-Lo.
J-Lo. Enrique Iglesias.
Jason Derulo.
Also the vocal coach for America's Got Talent.
Yes.
Currently. So he's spending a lot of time here in Nashville. He was saying earlier that he moved here and has been spending just as much time in Los Angeles that he does here.
Basically, through the first few years, yep.
And originally started, had been in a bunch of other TV shows. I remember the Jewel one that you were in. What was that called?
Platinum Hit.
Yeah.
Yep, as the writing camp with Evan and Erica, and Cara DeGuardi was on it and everything else, yeah.
Great, man. And where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Northern Virginia, D.C. area.
Okay.
So grew up there.
So what amount of hustle gets you to, like, how does this happen? Because it's like interesting because someone will say, oh man, you got lucky, you got that America's Got Talent gig. And obviously think that just someone, your phone rang and you showed up and did that.
Right.
Which we all know isn't true. But it's like, how does one dude get into so much opportunity? I mean, it's obviously hustle, right?
Yeah.
What's that look like? How do you get to that?
Using that particular gig that I'm in now, and we can kind of backtrack that. A few years ago, just through A&Rs and working on records and writing everything, I met David Gray, who was an A&R and over at Psycho Records, and they were working on the show X Factor. And through working with David Gray through not random projects, but different projects, the Leona Lewis stuff and everything that Psycho was working on, and just a great dude and mutual people that we know, he had called me for X Factor and was like, hey, we're in need of a vocal coach for the third season of X Factor. Would you come in and meet with everybody? And I'm like, sure. So I go in and I meet with David and Tim Byrne, and they actually are singing, and David and them talk to me and they're like, we actually think you might be better to do like A&Ring, helping with records because of your songwriting side and everything else. And at that time they had A&Rs for each judge, and Demi Lovato was one of the judges. And they actually thought I'd be perfect for Demi because I had worked with her before vocal producing and things like that, and just our relationship was great. So that started with just a random, I didn't know I was going to A&R. I thought I was going in as a vocal coach and trying something new, helping to, it's cover songs, but figuring out new ways to do it and find the right ones for the artist and find the balance of what the artist wants with what the coach wants, or the judge wants. And through that process, I met, different A&Rs that we were all on the come up. One of my great friends, Brahim Faraday, who's an A&R with Psycho now, but was also in Holland and hustling there. I was one of the first people he met here working on X Factor, and we were just great friends, and the season went great. Wound up writing some more songs. A couple years later, Simon Cowell comes back to America's Got Talent. The music team switches up a little bit. The vocal coach that was on the show decided to pursue other opportunities as well. So just the perfect storm of things. But I got the call because of all that backstory of, DQ, he gets vocal coaching and A&Ring and what we look for and all of that kind of vibe. A lot of the show of America's Got Talent also came from X Factor too. So just one of those, literally, it was a very long-winded how I even got that gig, as random as that gig seems.
It's funny because when we look at all of our friends talk about like, when did you come to town and how did it happen? And it's always this, it was just all this ancillary stuff that you look back a year later and you're like, oh man, I can't believe how many people I'm hanging out with that I met this guy through, like today, we're meeting face to face. It's like 2 years from now, it's like we do 5 things together.
Right.
It's that kind of thing. It's just, it's never the way you think like, when you're a kid, like, one day I'm going to be on these records I'm listening to, and it's going to be like, I'm going to get the phone call.
Right.
The phone call.
But what's crazy is...
It's going to ring on a red phone on the edge of the desk, and it's,
But what's crazy about that is how many records, the power of just, I feel like you put that energy out there, whoever you believe in and all those things, but good things can come out from that. And it's, you know, how many of those things of, I literally remember listening to Full Moon Records and sitting up in my room, Brandy and Rotten. I'm like, one day I'm going to work with Brandy and Darkchild. Never, ever thinking I was actually going to work with them. And one of my first cuts was Brandy and Darkchild. And it didn't happen the way I thought it was going to happen.
Right.
Like, definitely not the way you think it was, but those things of the records, the people that you've wished you worked for when you were young, and you actually get to work with them. And you're
crazy.
like, I did not expect it this way, but holy cow, I'm here.
And you
That's
do
crazy.
so many things. So it's like, do you like love A&Ring? Do you love songwriting? Do you love it all? Or do you do some of the things so you can keep in front of people to do the other things?
You know what's funny is all of this, I think like everyone, you kind of stumble into different things. And at the end of all this, part of me coming to Nashville, and even I love pop and R&B and all music and hip hop and country and all that. But for me, I found at the end of everything I do, I love artist development, I love songwriting, I love vocal. I actually do love all of those things, but I can't do just one all the time. And I think that's what it is. I drive myself nuts.
You don't do it as a means to an end, like, oh, I'm going to go ahead and do this thing that I dislike doing so I can keep the relationship going.
Yeah, no. You know, I feel we've been doing this a long time, and I feel like there's no need to force it. When you force it, it normally doesn't end very well.
Right.
There is like putting yourself in those situations, in uncomfortable situations. And I think anything you do, I tell artists all the time, like, you know, they love songwriting and love performing, but 90% of your job, if you are half as successful as you want to be, is not going to be doing the things you actually love doing, and it is work. So I think there's still a balance if you have to know the means to the end. Like, is it the greater good of what you're doing, and it's something that you love?
It's like, I'm going to race cars on Sunday, but I got to work on them all week.
Right.
Yeah.
DQ actually loves producing vocals. Can you imagine?
I've got so many things I want to ask you. Before we go into that, I've got a question. I hope I don't forget.
Fathom that idea.
Well, I want your opinion. I don't even know what A&R does anymore. Like, in the old days, whenever you watch the documentaries on the Eagles, it's like, I get what David Geffen and people at Geffen Records did, or Asylum Records. You know, it was like about going out, finding promise, then giving them time to incubate at a label, right? And it's like the first record fails. Second record fails, but has maybe something. Third record has a couple radio singles. Fourth record is massive.
Right.
That can't happen anymore. So
Right.
by the fourth record, it's like, you know, you'll get dumped halfway through they won't release the first record. So like, I don't understand, as a producer, I don't understand what A&R does anymore. Can you hit me to what A&R actually is?
I mean, that's a good question. I honestly feel like the A&Rs...
Current day.
Yeah, I mean, current day, honestly, I still feel like the A&Rs are us, the creatives that are developing the artists. And I think it's just switched now. You know, A&Rs at a label have more marketing experience and more things that, look, I don't want to do. I like being in a studio and that kind of thing, and have different expertise. But the artist development of that side and the repertoire definitely, I feel like, falls definitely much more on us, the producers, the songwriters, and artist development.
Yeah.
And it is a tough, you know, I don't know what that answer is, and it's forever changing. But what I do say, what I have noticed is when you have a label and, you know, everyone, I'm going to do this independently. You know, that is a beautiful thing, but it still takes major time and major money, even if you're doing it independently. So if you get the opportunity to go to a label, know what you're going there for and use that as an opportunity. I say the same thing as if you go on an America's Got Talent or any of those shows. Like, just because you get signed to a deal, you get signed to your publishing deal, you get on the show of America's Got Talent, X Factor, whatever it is, does not mean you're going to, that's not the end. Like, that's not, you've made it. And it's, how do you take those opportunities and not use them to help catapult and create new opportunities to show your talents and genius. I know that doesn't really answer your A&R thing, but this is just how.
No, I think it does. I think that it doesn't exist in the version that we grew up on. That
one
we are that now. Record
right.
producers, songwriters, people that are sort of developing, and that's I'm okay with that. But you know, what's really tough is like you think like, okay, when are you going to go ahead and give that away to someone? You know, it's like Mike's developing a couple of acts right now. He's A&Ring a couple of acts right now at Mike Shimshack Records, and it's like. He's got label interest, but it's like, but they're sort of just coming by and picking the apples off the tree. You know, when you're planting the tree, watering the tree, developing the tree.
You got to make the tree.
But, you know, and that is what it is. And I guess that's just fine. But it certainly does provide for an environment where the farmers and the A&R guys they've outsourced it and they don't pay for it anymore.
Right.
So you've got to come. The message to songwriters and record producers and artists is there is nobody that signs you and then makes you big. It is like you make it, prove of concept, proof of, you know, social engagement, and then they acquire it. And then hopefully take it on.
And they sign you for your vision, right? And then, I mean, we've all made the mistake. I've made it countless times coming up in the industry. You sign your deal and you think you don't have to work for it anymore. And they sign you for your hustle and your talent. And that's a mistake that all of us make. And it's okay to make those mistakes and learn from them. But those are some of the first mistakes that people make. It's like, oh, I signed the publishing deal. Oh, they're not giving me cuts. They're not doing this. And it's like, okay, true. But in the same, like, what are you doing as well to keep the hustle? And I've made that mistake. You know, you take on a manager and then you start losing those personal relationships with A&Rs because you love the fact that you can be a creative and just stay in the studio, and your manager is going in, not that they're not doing a great job for you, but one day you guys might part ways, and now you've lost that personal connection with those A&Rs that, yes, having great relationships, your manager's having great relationships, your publisher's having great relationships, but you need to keep those relationships. And I think, you know, we're all guilty of it through time and all those things, and horse blinders when we're working on a project. So just something for these young artists going, you know, getting on even looking at Mike, you know, with your band, you know, you guys have to decide, you know, if they're not going to add value to what you're already doing, then where are you going to go to them? Or can they add resources that you need to help out, but that's still adding value? You know what I mean? And if they can't add value, there's no reason to go to them. If you're already doing a certain thing, if they can make you whole and you need to do that because of how much investment, that's a whole other, you know, there's different things that obviously work, but
absolutely.
But I think at the end of the day, especially from conversations we've even had and just that, there is that balance. When do you go to the label? When do you not? And I don't think there's one right answer. It's to each his own into that investment and how you see it and where you are, what you can get done on your own and what you can't.
Out of all the episodes that we've done of this and all the people we've talked to across multiple levels of entertainment industry, everyone's story is like yours, which is like our story, which is like success isn't what you think it's going to be. When I worked on a record as a kid that was a major label record, and in my mind I thought, all the successful records I love are in major labels, so I just did a major label record, so this is now going to become a record that everybody loves. Like, I made that flaw in logic. Mm-hmm. And people don't realize that it is literally getting, like you were saying, getting your publishing deal is the beginning of your business just got acquired. You don't now have a sugar daddy.
Right.
You now just got funding, Series 1 funding for your company. Mm-hmm. And when you get a record deal, it's like, yeah, you're at the bottom of a brand new pile, which is like, when they did the numbers way back when, it was like 2 people on every label pay for everybody. The average major label record sold 5,000, even back whenever people were buying records, right?
Right.
And it was the Michael Jacksons that paid for everybody on the label. So it's like you're at the bottom of a new pile. You got to find a way to make your business stand out on the new platform you have it. So the good takeaway, I think, for people that are like us, but younger versions of us, is that it's literally not, it's never going to happen the way you think it's going to happen. It's about just networking and hustling and taking opportunity and trying to be great, seizing opportunity and just showing up every day. Mm-hmm. And when you do get opportunities, it's like, that just means you need to work a little harder and a little longer.
And go in and show, like, this has been a big thing, and I didn't realize I've done this my whole career, but and a lot of us do that have been in this, but it's like, how can you service the room, the session, how can you make it better and do that? Because as soon as you start, and everybody writes their own way, count your lines, count your this, count your that, but especially when you're starting off, being an intern, being a fly on the wall, being actually the engineer on a session, whatever it is, just try and put your imprint on it to make it better. Don't put your ego in it. That's a different thing. Like, I've done it this way and I've gone here, so do this. But that to me is when people see value in the room, and sometimes that value is just the energy of the room. You'll get invited back, and you know that, like, those are the random opportunities that you go to see your boy at a studio and just, who is that? Oh, they're dope. Oh, they rap. Next time, have them play some stuff. Like, all those things. It's like, don't go in thinking one thing. Just go in and how can you make the room better and your energy, like they walk out and be like, man.
I want to ask
dope
you guys.
vibes.
So when you first got into rooms, both of you, I don't know how it was for you. For me, this was it. I was scared to death that I needed to prove myself in the room.
Yes.
It still feels that way.
But I was desperately trying to force I would fight for my stuff
Yes.
so that people would say, hey, he did something. So I would maybe be fighting from the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm.
So like I was in the room, wasn't thinking about making the room better. I was thinking about everybody else thinking that I should be in that room and trying to like fight, trying to show off talent-wise.
Yeah.
And only after
Countless.
like, why don't they want me back in the rooms, right? The universe telling me, right? I slowly learned, and this was when I was a kid in Pittsburgh, I slowly learned like, hey, be what the room isn't. Find what the room needs to be and be talented enough to do anything.
Yep.
Right? And if you're not talented enough, be talented enough to recognize it and say, how do we get somebody in the room that can do that?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you start doing that, people were like, who is that dude? Oh, I want that guy in the room. He makes the room's better when that guy's in it. And we say exactly what you said, like making the room better. It's like, I felt when you started to say it, it was just like, we have not even talked about that.
Right.
It's like, there are things, if you want to be a success in the music business, talk to people that have been a success. The mission statement for this podcast is to give people a seat at the table that we were not able to have.
Yep.
Right? It's like, what do all these guys have in common? They all say the same thing, which is be great, be the best version of yourself. When you're in a room, find out how to make the room a better room.
Yep.
If you do that, people will want you in the room. That's the secret. The secret's not that hard.
Yeah, I feel like with writing, especially, it's like there's a maturity that comes where somebody walks in with a great idea, right? The younger version of me would have done what you were talking about, which is feeling like I would have to impose myself, wow, this is a great idea. Like, I got to make sure that I put... Now the older version of me is like, they might just be on that day. That's their day. Like, they came in with this amazing idea, and your responsibility, I believe, as a co-writer, is to go, okay, cool, that's great. We don't have to change that. That's amazing. Right. You know, like, but again, the older version of me would have felt like I would have had to impose my will on it.
And
I don't feel that way anymore.
There's been times where I've been in the room and I have continually written with people who have never put a lyric into a song and never even maybe put a piece of music or melody into a song. But every time we write together, we get great songs.
And the song wouldn't be the song without them.
What about all the conversation in between every lyric?
See, that's your maturity, is understanding. Like, you know, we were talking on the way over about an artist he's been working with, and the one thing that you can't manufacture is chemistry, right? And sometimes that chemistry is just the energy of the room. You know,
Well, even that with like a song is written in conversation. There's a song that's going to become, that worked on with them, and the song was literally written at a lunch table for 2.5 hours of being grilled, of just like laughing jokes, and then go to the studio and the song's written in about 30-45 minutes.
Right.
And yes, like technically the lyric and everything was put into the song in the studio, yes, but no, that song was written even if the person we weren't at lunch with, if I wasn't at lunch or whatever, like that song was written from that we wrote that song from that conversation, and that was the song. That was songwriting before being in the studio, right. Which does take maturity, and you just have to educate people with that.
I know you're from a different culture, LA.
Yeah.
So in Nashville, we just split it up half and half, third, one third. If there's 3, if there's 4, it's 25%. Depending on what someone does that day, they could be a genius or they could just be a really great typist. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's the case, but for me, like if I'm in a situation like that where you're at a restaurant writing or talking and that this just has this great idea and foundation for a song, you go back and write it, like I don't have any issue giving that person half the copyright.
Right.
I mean, they're a part of the intellectual property. What's special about that song is the concept and the idea. And many people will argue and count lines.
And I think some of this goes to a lot of things we're kind of talking about too. And I've been having this conversation a lot specifically in Nashville too. And it's finding, there's pros and cons to all. I believe in writing the song and the integrity of that, and I also believe that you haven't heard the song, but what you add to the song changes it so much. Yes, you're a producer, but some of those things also do warrant writing, depending on what those, like, what are people's expertise, and things are different now, good or bad. And I can side with either side, but what I do think starts blurring it is where you talk about A&Rs and all that. There are records that somehow wire A&Rs or managers, writers on the record when they manage the artist to write that. And that's where the distrust of that side comes, and I completely understand that. You know what I mean? So
you got to be in the room,
and you got to be in the room.
You got to be in the room. If you're gonna make the room better, you got to be in the room.
You got to be in the room. I love that. So it's like doing those kind of things. I think people also forget, and it's like finding. But it's knowing what I try and tell people when they want to share splits. Oh, well, if there's 4 people on the record, it dilutes the song. And I guarantee you the 9 people on Havana don't care.
Right.
Because all it does, and this is what where the ego part can get in the way, and wise years, whatever, and we all are victim to it. For those 9 people on a number 1 record or a top 10 record is going to create the exact same opportunities. If one of those people did not bring something to the room, they're not going to be able to capitalize on any of those opportunities.
In the future, you're right.
If you are secure in yourself as a songwriter or as a producer or whatever those things, I don't care if your percentage is 1%, 10%, 20%, the same opportunities are happening. And as you know, you can't live, you could live off of one crazy record, but those records don't really exist like that anymore. And you can't live and die off that one record. Like, I'm always like, I just hope my last placement isn't my last placement. You know, and it's like, let's just keep writing and having great stuff come out.
Right.
But those opportunities, you have to have faith in yourself and your own abilities in the room. If somebody doesn't deserve a piece of the record, they don't deserve a piece of the record. But if they do, don't let your ego in that side get in the way. Like, you're gonna get the same opportunities, and now it's on you to put that hustle and create another opportunity from something else.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great point. And, you know, it's like, you got to learn as a creator, it's like, how do you keep creating? It's like, would your life be better by excluding this person you just had a hit with? And if you do enjoy it, and maybe they don't bring as much to the table creatively, but you write great songs with them, the outcome should be great songs. You should keep writing with them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and of course, we always say that the toughest part of becoming successful is becoming successful. People change during that. Usually, if you get people after they're successful, you become friends, you'll stay friends.
Yep.
But if you're friends and you all transition into success together, that's a volatile area. You don't know how that's going to turn out. So, you know, but it's like, try to keep things together. If you've got something special and it was cut, there's something going on there chemistry-wise, and you should try to preserve it.
And you know, creativity is ebb and flows too, you know? And you may have hit your season creating with them at that time, and that's okay too, but be honest with each other and don't make it feel like, because then I feel like what happens is people are afraid to have those conversations. So then you start distancing and you start getting chemistry with another writer or this and that, and then people get in their feels because they're like, yo, I mean, we did all this stuff together. And it's knowing that, okay, right now, like, go write with some other people, get some new inspiration. I need to do the same thing. And then when we come back, but always open your door to keep doing those sessions, because those waves do happen.
Yeah. All right. So I do want to ask you about vocal producing, because it is, as much as like, it's the dirty jobs of making records. It's the part where you were down in a trench, and if you don't fix it, you're going to have sewer all through your yard, right? I mean,
it's arguably the most important.
It's the most important, most critical. If it doesn't work, the record, no matter how insane the record is, it's not going to do anything.
Right.
A lot of consequence. And then it's just like, it's so tedious. You know, you're like talking, like we recently, last year actually, we did this Swedish record, and the Swedes don't have a in their language, no TH. It's da.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of tediousness where you're going through, and it's like, no, it's not, you know, it's this. And think about that. That's not, if you've never done that, it's,
right, that's not,
it's like next level
I
Cirque du
have a
Soleil.
3-year-old and 5-year-old and a 5-year-old, and watching them learn how to do that younger was interesting too.
Right. So it's like, what is it? What kind of sadist really loves vocal producing? Do you do it where you just come in on a record and all you're doing are the vocals? You've got producers that are going to do the rest of the record, and you're just coming for the vocals? So
I have, it's a little bit of both. I've been on the side of vocal producing songs I write and vocal producing songs I don't write. And I mean, my first kind of vocal production thing of a song I didn't write was for David Guetta and Nicki Minaj, a song called Turn Me On. And it happened from doing a writing trip with Guetta and Evan Bogart in the writing camp. And we were just kind of writing songs. We'd go to the club with him and watch him play records. And then the next morning we'd write to some of the beats that he played off of that energy. And we kind of just all vibed and bonded. And David was like, I love your like how your vocals sound. So fast forward to, I don't know, 6 months later, a year later, he calls me and is like, hey, I need you to come to the studio. And I'm like, okay, hi, I didn't know you were in town. You know, and he's like, yeah. He's like, great to talk to you. Like, yeah, brother, I'm in town. I need your help with the record. I'm like, all right, cool. He's like, the trick is the artist doesn't want you here. And I'm like, wait, then why am I coming? Right? Yeah. And he's like, no, I need you here. And I'm like, okay. And
was he producing?
He's the producer. It was his record. So I go to the session, and Nikki is in the booth recording the song. It's a song that Esther Dean wrote. And I come in, and David has me come to the console. It's a Conway, huge SSL board. And he has me come over, and Nikki, this DQ, Nikki. I'm like, hi. She's like, hi. And she's in her zone. And I'm like, I'm just going to, like, sit back. So, sorry, a little long-winded, but just kind of to explain a little bit. But, Guetta, like I sat to the side where she couldn't see me, and Guetta was still in front of the board, and she kept doing some passes. And then Guetta was like, come sit here. Like, it was on purpose. Like, so she sees that he's telling me to come sit down at the console, you know, and I come sit, and I'm still just letting her do her thing. And I wait for an opportunity to make it better versus just giving input to give input, because she's great. She does her own vocals. She does that. She doesn't need someone to fix her. She just needs someone to help make her better. So I find this opportunity, and she's trying to sing on the pre of the chorus, and it's life, that little descend part. And I was just like, oh, just like, I don't even remember exactly what I said, but I was like, oh, try this. And it worked. And she was like, oh. And once that happened, I was able to communicate.
Earn
and it was
trust.
Yeah, earn a little trust. And at the end of the day, my thing, I say this, the only room for ego is the song. It's the only room for ego. That's the only ego you should feed. And so it was, if I didn't have anything to say, I didn't say it. If I did, I did. And there was times that literally I just let her do her thing, but that's how the record came about. So to go on that, I mean, I love cutting vocals with people, and I think I just love that interaction. My legacy that I want to leave behind, I want to have education be a thing of this, even where people can get access to conversations in little snippets of things that can help you skip 2 years of your journey, not your work, but your focus, like help focus you in the right places. And I think that is why I love vocal production, because it feels like that one-on-one. I was an music education major first in college, then I went to Fred Shenandoah, then I went to Berkeley for studio MP&E, you know? And that's still a passion of mine. So I think vocal production still gives me that like teaching moment where I feel like I can be taught, but also help teach somebody and make them a better them. And vocal production, I also feel like is 90% mental. It's, you know, somebody's...
So do producers ask you to come on to the record to do the vocal production, or does the artist?
Both. I've had both.
So is that so you've got to like win over the artist sometimes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to win over the producer. Mm-hmm. I'd imagine winning over the producer would be really difficult because they're probably pretty territorial in regards to creative control on a record.
Yeah.
Which one's tougher?
I mean, when the artist requests, normally it's after the producer's already requested, if that makes sense. Like normally my first time with Demi Lovato was with Matt Squire, and Matt Squire, who is an amazing vocal producer as well, but an overall producer, like he can do top to bottom. He was like, bro, I heard you're great with vocals. I am wondering if you would be willing to come in. He's like, I actually would just love to take the step of being a producer and like not be so involved and be able to kind of like outside perspective come in. He was like, would you mind? And that's the first time I worked with Demi. And Matt Squire was like, oh my gosh, like this was amazing how it worked. Like the way that you got a vocal out of her, you got it out of her 10 times faster than I would have, but it's I'm a singer, so just how I interact and do that too.
DQ is much more positive than we are, Joe. As a person, he's very optimistic and positive.
You know,
I think it's a good hang.
What you said about like fighting for the song is like, if you can get a room around that concept of fighting for the song, that works. Like, I can have an argument with you about the song, and as long as we're both based off of fighting for what we believe is best for the song, you and I can go have lunch together. But if I come in and I'm fighting for my ego, and I'm offended and I'm offending you, it's like, that never works. That's the end of every creative relationship, ever.
I made you, you made me. No, we made each other.
Yeah, but if you can get in there, people will respect you. And you need to start clearing your rooms out. If people aren't fighting for the song, you need to like be spending less time with them in the studio.
Right.
So, find a crew. Half of it is finding a crew. And the other half is like, look at you, man. I can tell, like, you've got this thing that I could bring you into my session and produce my vocals, and I wouldn't feel threatened that you were going to take over the record.
Oh.
So if I was a producer making a record, I would say, man, let's get that guy in here. And just after hanging with you for a half an hour here, I know that you wouldn't do that thing where you steal a record and I'm not working on records in the future. Right? There's a thing that is unexplainable about people that whenever you hang with them, like, hey, I want to hang more with this person, and I have a level of trust with them, and they're the best thing for the record, so I'm bringing them on the record, and now we can like start to do some extraordinary stuff we can't do on our own, kind of thing, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
So that's a whole other nuance that like you can't teach somebody that, but they can watch you and they can learn that.
Right.
So as a kid, I got to work with like people like Phil Ramone and like a punch list of people that were epic. And what I did was sit there and watch them. And I would literally say, wow, Daniel Lanois did this thing. And I was like, it blew my mind.
Right.
I'm like, I'm going to do that. And then someone would be unkind to a delivery guy or an assistant. And I'd say, I don't want to do that. But you can sort of watch people and say, hey, all vocal producers they have the information, they have command of the dialogue when they need to train someone, but they seem to work better whenever they're passive.
Well, and
asked to engage rather than dominant and taking over.
And as a producer that produces 100% of the record side of things, and you'll outsource if you need to, but you always get a better product when the artist trusts you. And the artist trusts you when you trust them. And, there's nothing against styles of vocal production and all of that. My style is there are definitely things I can do that somebody else can't do, and vice versa. And it's not about them. I don't want them to sound like me. I want them to sound like the best version of them. One of my favorite mixers is Manny Marroquin, mainly because, amazing person, but also because 90% of the time when I hear a record, I'm like, damn, who the hell mixed this? It's Manny, and I don't realize he mixed it till I looked it up, and I love the transparency of that and just loving mixes. And that's, before I ever knew him, that's always been my approach with vocal production of like, don't teach the artist and give them things, but they want to try certain passes, I can get them to try outlandish things for me. If I trust them enough to let them do what they do, then that gives me the leeway. And I'm like, look, we definitely grabbed your takes, let's just grab a couple of mine, and then if you like it, you like it. If you don't, we literally.
And then you edit it together and you play it for them and whatever it is.
Exactly.
All right, so you're competent, you're great, you've got many proficiencies. If you put that on a chart of like why you're successful, how much of it is that, and how much of it is just like psychology, being a good dude, learning how to be the best version of what a room needs? Weigh that on a scale for me in regards to saying, hey, how critical, if you were rebuilding yourself in the new 2.0 version, how much would that weigh? Talent versus...
I don't think I would change too much. Talent keeps you in a room.
I want a ratio.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to think of like being good due to talent. Or like those kind of, like the balance of psychology.
So when people call on you, you deliver.
Mm-hmm.
But how much of that, if you had to say your success, the ingredients of your success, how much of it is it 40% talent, 60% psychology and being in the right mode in interpersonal relationships? Is it 75-25? What is that?
Wow. I would say of funny. I would say talent 100%, but the reason I say that is because talent of psychology and being able to work with people and move around. So you have to be talented in knowing how to read rooms and read people. But of that of like actual like technical skill, talent in that, I would say probably 30% technical talent, honestly, for what I do. And maybe it's also because we've put in the 30,000 hours to where that feels second nature as much. But really the technical side is 30%, and that's the melodyning afterwards, the comping, the this. When it comes to the actual like session itself, honestly, it's almost all vibe, because even with America's Got Talent, I don't care what it is. Like, the beautiful thing of technology is we can fix anything, but you can't fix feel. And if you can't make me feel, I don't care. Like, so you could sing, so many people like to sing live and sing the phone book. And it's like, look, I don't care about your riff. If it doesn't mean anything, most people think a riff is a mistake. Like, so if you're gonna do it, put it in the right place. And those kind of things. So to me, it's all about feel. If I can't get the artist in a vibe where if it's an up tempo and they feel like they love the song and are killing it, I'm not doing my job. If they're coming up amped up, but we need to do a sad song and I need to get them somehow in a depressed, not depressed state, but that kind of sad state, it might be blacking out the whole thing, putting a curtain where I can't even see them, giving them awkward silence before I hit record on a record for 5 seconds, even though I say I'm gonna go, and it gives them this weird like, where am I going to purposely put them off? And those are little silent cues, and those have nothing to do with that has nothing to do with technical talent, but that does have to do with being in countless rooms, watching other producers, other writers that are better than me, that have more experience than I am, and picking up those little cues even from my own mistakes.
So when you're working on America's Got Talent, you're working as a vocal producer?
Vocal coach, yeah.
Okay. And what does that look like on a given week?
So for the show, it's a lot different than probably what people think normal vocal coaching is. I mean, I can definitely help with scales and all of that, but on these kind of shows, you don't have enough time to reteach fundamentals. So even with that, there's a lot of pressure. You're going on stage, you're doing this. So this one is a lot of like A&Ring, working with the music team. We have a few people on the staff for just the music team. Graham Stack, the music director. Scott Simons plays keys. We have some A&Rs, like there's squads for everything, for production, for magic act, all that stuff. So what we do is we sit with the artist and we'll go over songs and have them sing back to us, and normally like just a verse chorus, and see if we can find different ways. And they'll bring suggestions, we'll bring suggestions, just knowing their voices, and we'll start with that. And then we'll narrow it down normally to one or two choices, like one main one and a backup for them to present for when we get up to rehearsals for the actual show. And it'll kind of go through. I'm there to listen to what the A&Rs and everyone's saying kind of about the song and the arc of the show. I'm listening to the singer and hearing what they're already doing, to hear how I can blend what the two of them are doing. This is just me for how I approach vocal coaching for the show. And I really try and just judge their emotions and try and counter whatever happens, because those shows are fast and a lot's going on, and it may not be the real reality of what would happen when you come out, but that pressure and that type of jumping back and forth is a real reality, just a different one. So I wind up just kind of watching, and then over the next couple of days, I'll kind of let's work on the melody first and lock it before. You can't make it your own until you know where you're starting. So you always have a place to land on home. And so that'll be like the first day, and we kind of just go over it, make sure the key's right. And then the next day, they'll come back and they'll do like a little rehearsal video to send to the producers, to me, everyone, and little notes. And the music, they might be like, oh, we're missing that big, we like to call it a vote note. We're missing that big moment in the thing. Can we help find that? And then so I'll work on them the next time. Like, all right, cool, working on this. Keep your verse the same, but now when we get to the bridge, let's start making a little more. And then here, let's pop and go. And then we try that, and if it works, we keep it. If we feel like they can go further, I'll push them a little further. So that's a lot of leading up to the show itself. And I'll help warm them up, but I ask them to come warmed up, because I'm more utilized being creative with them and making sure that it's the right. I kind of look at it like vocal producing a 1.5-minute version of a song versus just coaching it. And then we'll start gearing up to it, and if they have issues hitting something, I'll tell singers this all the time. I tell, my voice teacher taught this to me, when you have a hard time hitting like a high note and you're on stage, you get diamond by pressurizing coal, you know? So you pretend there's a piece of coal in your bum, and when you go for the note, you squeeze the diamond out. And it does like 5 different technical things at one time, but when you're on stage, it's something so easy to remember, even when you're nervous.
How much of us just clenched our buttocks?
But it is those things. Like, those are things that I can help with technique in the moment, and those are probably the more coaching things technical wise that I do. I'll show them a couple warm-ups. Some have never had warm-ups and are just naturally gifted. So I'll give them some things to start doing at home. So when they come to me, like I said, we can be as productive on the song as possible.
So out of all those shows, America's Got Talent seems the most post-produced. Like when I watch, it might not be live, but like when I watch on YouTube, and I assume they're just pulling that right off of the programming, but there's you could tell it feels like it was video posted, right? There's moments, there's music over comments, you know, as the people are giving the judges are talking, there's swelling moments. And, you know, so I'm wondering how much of that, is there a bunch of stuff where people are melodyning vocals?
No, I mean,
or is that all?
That's actually pretty live. Because really the only thing that's pre-recorded, technically, I guess, is the auditions, the initial auditions in the second round. After that is straight live. I don't know what magic or whatever they do after that, but So
your job's done after the performance?
Yeah, as soon as they're done, I'm done with them until then we start getting ready for the next week or whatever else. But as far as like my hands on any of what goes, when it's live, and then whatever they post up after, they have a whole squad.
And what is it, like what's your work week? Is there a shooting schedule? You're shooting in the falls, and is it a 9-week shoot cycle?
Yeah, you know, so it's 12 weeks. So I've been in LA at least 3 months out of the year for the last couple of years, just for the show.
How many hours a week are you tied up on working?
It depends. So the initial audition round is like, say, a 3-week run.
But like on a given day,
but I could be there from 8 till 10. On a filming day, I would be there at 8 a.m. and not leave until midnight. Right. But on other days where the stage is dark and we're just seeing the music acts and we can see them a half hour at a time, I'm there for 2 hours. But it's pretty much 5 to 6 hours.
But you're always getting emails and always figuring out what you need to do with this vocalist for this song. So it's labor intensive.
Yeah.
And then it's like how long until you shoot again? 12 weeks and then...
Oh, no, I mean, the live is every week. Right now with the auditions...
But if 12 weeks of shooting, let's say.
Oh, yeah, so the 12 weeks of shooting. So the audition
round... That's the season? 12 weeks?
Yeah. So the audition round where you say it's like the first few weeks where they do multiple shows, I mean, we're doing 8 shows a week. Like literally we're doing an afternoon show, evening show, afternoon, evening show, one dark day, afternoon, evening show, afternoon, evening show. And we're seeing, there's magic acts, everybody acts. I'm only seeing the music acts, but it's literally that first one is at least 8 shows a week are happening with thousands of people in each audience switching it out every time. Like all of that stuff. It's pretty intense. Then the second round, because they know who it is, the judge cuts, it's a little bit easier. And that's a week long. And we do a show every like 2 or 3 days, because then we have a little bit more time with each act to make it a little bit better and for the progression. Because the first audition really is, I try not to have my hands on them too much because it really is their first time seeing the judges. So I try, and the approach I take is I may only see them an hour, half hour to an hour before ever, if they never get through this next stage. How can I impact their life? To hopefully 10 years from now, they take one little thing I said and use this in whatever they're doing in their life, whether that's the diamond, whether that's just teaching them how to connect and feel with the song as a group, learning how to blend. There's little things, and I try and give them at least one thing, hopefully, that they can take with them forever, whether I see them again or not.
But in 12 weeks, you have a finished season.
Mm-hmm. So, well, it's spread over, we start in March, and it's going to end in September. So it's spread over almost a year, 9 months.
Okay, and then it's 3 months off, and then 9 months on.
Yeah, so it's like 3 weeks. Yeah, it's like 3 weeks
so
on, 2 weeks off, 2 weeks on. I didn't have the gig when I moved to Nashville.
Oh.
So, but why I moved to Nashville was my wife and I we're both from Northern Virginia. We never saw ourselves in LA forever when we moved there. We love LA, made it home. I think we were there longer than we thought we were going to be even. First time I ever came to Nashville 10, 12 years ago to write. I remember going back to LA and telling my wife, like, I don't know when, but we're going to move to Nashville one day. And she was like, wow. I was like, it reminds me of where, like, feel of kind of where we grew up and everything. And so it's how you raise your kids, it's the family and all that stuff. But both of our families, East Coast, retiring in Florida, so many different things. Having kids, we knew we wanted to kind of be closer. I also, going to my like teaching side and all of that, I love artist development more than even writing for developed artists already. I just love the blank canvas. I mean, I'll gladly write, but just there's something magic about that blank canvas. And there's so much great pop, urban, every walks of life music here, but there's not enough people to truly mentor it that have been in it that are not about ego. Where some are like, yeah, I'm just going to sign a bunch of people and it's going to be my show. And it's like, I want to build a culture, a thing where it's not about people being, whoever's supposed to be signed, whoever do your thing in the business, but it's not about who's signed to who. It's like, let's educate these kids and give them opportunity and give them real feedback of like, look, yes, this is a pop record, but this is what makes it pop. These extra details, the fine tuning, the things that you've learned. It's like you can get so much. There's so much that we can learn from the bedroom producers, but there's also so much they can learn from us to give it, why do these songs have longevity? Why do things transition that way and all that? And that's the things that we can teach. And so that's really, I wanted to come here to start helping to develop that.
We were just talking about, we have talked over the years about people who make their living off of people chasing the dream, right? And it's like, immediately that gets my radar going. Like I'm like, I can only liken it to living in New York City. Have you lived in New York?
But I've definitely been a few times.
Okay, so, but LA is probably the same. And in New York City, every bank in the day had like a glass corner where the ATMs were in there.
Right.
And inevitably somebody would open the door for you, and the calculation your brain does. Who's this guy? What does he want? Am I in danger? Is he going to follow me? All that math that starts to happen. Mm-hmm. When people start talking to me about mentors in the music business, my brain starts doing that same math.
Right.
Like, am I about to get clubbed over the head? You know?
Right.
And it's odds are pretty good that you're going to. But it's like there's that great Simon Sinek video, rest his soul.
He's still alive, by the way.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
Oh, we need to delve into this. He's even become more like immortal now. It's like Yoda figure. Okay. God bless him. He was talking about having people buy into your why. Mm-hmm. And it's like the difference between the reason why people associate with brands with Apple, companies like Apple, is that they don't care what they make. They'll buy whatever they make because they believe who they are.
Well, it's funny because I'm big in podcasts lately, and I've been on my own like little journey. But the thing that Google and Apple and all of them have is what they are calling an MTP, a massive transformative purpose. Yeah. And it's like where you can. That's not what their slogan when they sell Apple. It's like what is it that we want to?
Yeah, this is what we believe. And by the way, we make this really cool stuff.
Exactly.
And it's like, dude, I get that from you.
Oh,
like I believe you. Like I believe your purpose. Like I would want my son to study under you, right? That's the level. Right. But there are people, Nashville needs more of what you're doing.
Absolutely.
It's like you should be, I don't think anybody would argue that you shouldn't be compensated,
right?
And that's what everybody wants to be, is compensated for their information. But I believe that the reason why you're trying to shorten those distances for people in a learning situation, because you think you want to pay it forward. Right. You want to be a part of people becoming the next great version.
Well, you should feel guilty if you die with knowledge in your head.
Yeah.
Like I heard that a few months ago.
Somebody who believes that. Do you believe that?
Yes, absolutely.
If you believe that, then that answers a lot of questions for me.
It's really good.
As to whether or not I'd want to hang out with you or do business with you. There's a lot of people in this town that I question, and I'm just like, I don't want to pass judgment on them, but they're that person at the bank. My math isn't quite figured out yet. The calculus hasn't been figured out. And I like to give them the benefit of the doubt, but the reality is like, I'm still really concerned about them. And I don't know how I feel. It's like the Maya Angelou quote. If you know, what is it?
Somebody shows you who they are, believe them.
Yeah, but they'll remember, they won't remember what you did. Oh, yeah. They won't remember what
how you made
they
them
told you. They'll remember how you made them feel.
Absolutely. That's even clickbait. That's social media. That's all those things. A moment on The Voice, on any of those things. It's like people will not remember what you're saying, but they will remember how you made them feel. Make them come back to how you made them feel.
And even if you're wrong, even if I studied with you and you were wrong, I know you came from a good place and you believed it. Now, if you were coming from a place where your only objective was to fatten your bank account, then I would feel jilted at the end.
Right.
You know? And I'm not even saying you're asking for money, but like, I believe
exactly.
you deserve money. But I would have a lot more grace for somebody that we'd done everything and gone through, and I bought into your philosophy and your method, and I worked hard and I failed, and it was like proven that it was just a wrong direction. I believe that you were driven by the right motivation and the right purpose. And that's just like, those are the people I want to surround myself with in recording dates, session musicians that believe the same way. If you're in my session and I can tell that you don't give a shit,
Right.
I don't hate you at all. I just don't want to be in the same room ever again.
Time is precious. We can't get it back.
Right. People show you who they are, going to the other quote, believe them. It's like time is precious. You need to spend it with the people you think you can make the most difference with.
Absolutely.
And that's like when a session player's in making a record with you, it's like there is something you can do that's super special that day, or you can phone it in. And I'm just not in the business. My mission statement is to be in the room with people that believe that. They believe they can do something extraordinary. And I don't know what it is. This is the undefinable thing that, I know I'm swimming around this, but it's like, you have this thing that is intriguing to me.
Thank you.
I want you in the room. It's like, I don't know what that is. I wish I could recognize that, because I wish I could tell. I have a production school, an audio production school, where we teach kids how to be great engineers and producers. And we try to teach them this thing.
Anytime you need me, I'm there.
We're going to have you. But there's this thing, which is this gelatinous thing that floats into the room where you can't really put chalk line around it, or you can't touch it. You've got this thing, which is like, that's what they need. And it's so impossible to describe to people, but it really does come from being in the room with people and being self-aware. If you can be self-aware and see it and say, I don't know what that is, but I want more of that. Whatever that guy has, he wants the best for the room, and he's confident enough to go into any room and make it better.
Yeah. And I think that's from I've made plenty of mistakes, but never from my intention being in the wrong place.
And they're totally forgivable.
Right. And that's the thing. When your intention is in the right place, everything is forgivable.
Nobody blames Babe Ruth for striking out more than he hits home runs. It's like the intention is everything.
Right. And it's those things. Like, I've learned along the way, and we've all learned, who you meet on the way up, you'll see on the way down. But also, like, people that you build with that you may not talk to anymore. We were all young and figuring it out. So some of the things that felt malicious or felt, they screwed me or they did this in the moment, and trying to be compassionate and understanding that comes with age and doing it all, you start to realize, like, no, they were just doing the best they could as well. And you have to have those conversations. When you start understanding that, especially to be a great creative, I think all of us in our own way still have our issues in order to be, when a great songwriter friend of mine, JQ, had told me this, and it stuck like glue too. And it was like, when you've been burned before, you're always weird around fire, and we could all do something and touch on it, and the fires, all of our triggers are different, but the fire still gets us all this. And then all of a sudden we start communicating weird. And when you start kind of looking at it that way, and especially in the world that we are, and we let out our emotions in our songs, and that's what makes them so great, is, having compassion for that, because surrounding myself with people that are better than me, and I don't mean professionally, I mean just in life, better family men, better at music, better at teaching, better at this, it doesn't matter, just people that elevate my life. And because life is hard, and we're all going to get knocked down, and we get way more no's than yeses, and it's so easy and we're all victim of, we're all human, and we go and we go down that rabbit hole, but you do have to love this industry if we're going to be in it, because it is not easy. Like, you really do have to love it.
And this is a learned behavior, right? So this is something that you have slowly, if you're like me, you've come to terms with it. It's like, here's a Y in the road. I got to make a decision whether I'm going to do the noble thing that the person I want to be and have this attitude towards any situation creatively or business-wise, or I'm going to do the other thing where I lean into the negativity. And I've found that once you make enough, you tell me what you think, and once you make enough of the right decisions, it becomes how you're hardwired.
Yeah.
So it's not, now in my life, it's not even a decision.
Right.
It's easy, where it was a super struggle at the beginning to be happy for friends that were having hits when I wasn't, right? Or got something that I felt like I should have got, or I got ripped out of, or not credited correctly, right?
Right.
And then it's like, it's tough. And then it's like, okay, this is the way it's going. And then all of a sudden it's just like, you don't even notice the whys anymore, the whys in the road. Have you found it to be that way for you? Was it a learned behavior? Or was it because human nature does not want you to do this?
Right. What is it? It's a little bit of both. I think some of my wanting to do the right thing, to be honest, comes from like an abandonment trauma, just being completely honest. And almost like part of it started I wanted to please people so much that I would sacrifice my own well-being and emotions and red flags and everything else because I didn't want to ruffle. And those are the times that I think I spiraled more negative, obviously, because I didn't realize those were the things that I was dealing with and how I was going through it. And that just years and all these different things.
I can totally see that.
But now that I've and I've always been a pretty positive person. And I also think because now looking back, I was triumphant to do that, being 12 years old, 8th grade, going to my house, the doors are literally locked and there's a bag with clothes, being like, you're no longer a part of this family, go live with your father. And I'm sitting on a curb waiting for my father to come pick me up. Like, there was a piece of that always, like, I love my mother and we're actually great. We could have never been, like, I actually love that we have our relationship now. But the half of my career, and I've had conversations with some friends of this recently too, was, I made it because almost in spite of, versus like I made it because you believed in me. I made it because this happened. Like I was gonna make something out of myself. And then that's
and you had a way of like plugging in to confrontational or power situations in a way that was non-threatening because that's how you were raised.
But I found that's where my ego got in the writing rooms, where I fell victim of, like, especially when you get really comfortable with people, sometimes what happens is you feel like you're not bringing enough all the time. So then I'd start being like, okay, we're getting too complacent and I need to start. And that was an ego of being fear of being abandoned. And at the end of the day, it did happen, but not in that way. I abandoned myself because I put that energy out there and I started planting that seed. And it doesn't make things that happened right or wrong, but I do believe, like, I made those things happen because I couldn't get that out of the back of my head. And now flipping it and being like, look, but all of these great things happen. Yes, this happened, but look at all these amazing things that also happened. And these wouldn't happen if this didn't happen. And
it makes it almost impossible for you to set out to accomplish a single thing because your pathway is so littered with, with challenges and things that are trying to bang you off into the woods.
Right.
It's like, I want to be this. So your perception is that that's the journey, but then you end up taking this other one that's just like riddled with self-inadequacy, riddled with ego, with non-ego, learning to become the version. Opportunities arise, and you end up. And it's a beautiful thing in the end because it becomes like a whole other painting of your life.
And even to vocal production, I think that's part of my thing is like the pain that we've all had pain and all of that stuff, and beautiful art comes out of those things. But, I want to help people heal from that because we've all been, and your journey is different than mine, but whatever your thing is, I want to be a part of that healing because I know what it feels like to feel like that, and I don't want anyone else, and I can't control that, but how can I help? Okay, you are feeling this way, how can we channel it now because our favorite songs, and you are an artist, but your favorite song came because that person was having that moment on that song, right. And that song, as much as it's a heartbreaking song, was a healing moment when they sang it. Like, and and I think that's the part of me that also drives me in vocal production of that. It's like trying to figure out, okay, how do we, each song, LMFAO's Party Rock, like that is wholeheartedly them. They believe that to their bones singing that song. It would not work if I sang it or if maybe Beyonce because she's Beyonce, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
do you think that without the fear of abandonment that you would be as successful as you are?
No.
Right.
I don't.
Oddly, note to artist parents, abandon your children.
Please don't.
Yeah, but you think about that, it's like this horrible thing that was, and it's like how much success in my life, in your life, comes out of fear. Yeah. Comes out of like, why is it that I made more money when I bought a house or got married? Why was it that I made more money when I bought the house and I had a baby or moved to New York City? All these things were like, they were based out of fear. The fear of like, I'm so thankful. I have some friends that, I know a couple people who were trust fund friends, right? They don't have that.
Right.
And it's like, but it's horrible because you're driven out of this, like the very bottom of the frying pan, which is all the wrong reasons to make decisions, out of fear, out of not being good enough. But very, very commonly, the outcome is that you get an extraordinary person that grows out of the outcropping of rock. You ever see those like cedar trees that are like on the Yosemite coming out of the very north piece of rock on El Capitan, and you've got a cedar tree.
I always feel like
how could that grow out of that? But it's like, it's extraordinary because of it.
I always feel like show me a well-adjusted artist, I'll show you a crappy artist.
I hate that it comes from like, hey, if you do it right, if you have a kid and you actually do it right and you love them, that they're probably going to be fairly uninteresting. So what do we need to do? We need to move to Jersey City.
Rock it up a little bit. Just rock the boat.
Put your kid on the front step, start making them work, selling, playing on buckets and selling CDs. And
I mean, this pandemic's helping us out a little bit.
Yeah, grit. People need to suffer.
I mean, it's weird, but you do to know what joy is, right? And it's not that I don't wish suffering on anybody, but just life. I
hate that it's based out of a seedling of like abandonment or not being good enough or anxiety. I hate that that's where it comes from, but very commonly it does. But the beautiful thing is that like everything that you've become is derivative of that. And it's like you took something, a lot of people will take that and use it as an excuse for the next 40 years as to why they never did anything. But there's a small sliver of people that are extraordinary and they end up doing something like that. And I think that's what makes it so special. I haven't quite figured it. That's the other thing I love about this. When we're trying to figure out what it is about you, this like the indescribable elements of it, it's like, that's what keeps me after 30 years, like trying to figure out why it is that is such a special thing. Why is music so special with the right chemistry and the right people? It still eludes the people that have been really chomping at it and have kind of figured out a rudimentary way to keep doing it, right? But there's still, every once in a while, we'll dip our toe into something really special and be like, wow, what was that? So that's the beautiful thing about it. I'm glad. Do you have a website?
No.
How do people?
Instagram, hello DQ. I'm pretty low key.
You're like Mike.
Yeah,
That's right, man. Just Instagram.
I got Instagram. I don't really check Facebook message too much.
If people reach out to you on Instagram, and want to hire you, is that something that interests you?
I mean, if they want to reach out to me, and then just let me know, and then I'll give them my email address, and they can contact me, no problem. And I can, you can have it after this, and whoever wants. If you, I don't know how you guys do it. But I can give you, I can give an email too if people want to reach out. If that's what you want. I don't know how you like to do it. Sound me easy.
Yeah, we'll put it. Under the description of this, we'll put.
The
Instagram thing.
Yeah, just hello DQ, and then I can get you my email and all that. I check that pretty well and all that. And then if you know Joe or Shaq, they can get a hold of me and they'll have my email and no problem.
Well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Such a really cool thing. I sat down and was unprepared for the coolness that was coming out. So that's always a good feeling. So people will be able to check you out on Instagram. And I want to dedicate today's podcast. A really great friend of mine passed away. I found out about it last night. His name is John Russell.
No.
Yeah. So John had been struggling for quite a while. But one of these guys that was incredible in the music business, but he also was working really hard and had really had great success in commercial real estate, and a brilliant guy, a guy that I leaned on continuously for consultation for, real estate stuff, and a terrific human being. I think the best testament is that I had been searching for the last 7 years for something that I could go into business and do something with him, an investment or whatnot. He's just a super special dude. So John is survived by his wife and his children, and it was just he'll leave just a hole in the center of all the people's lives that he was a part of. So great man, John Russell. Pray for his family and his people. So thank you so much. We're signing off here from the West Barn. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.